Oromo Voice Radio English program. Oromo Voice Radio is broadcasting to Oromia at 16-meter band or 17,850 kilohertz or on oromovoice.org website. OVR broadcasts Oromia Insight program every Monday for 15 minutes at 7:15 p.m. Oromia local time. Welcome to Oromia Insight program.
Oromia is a country in East Africa well known as the Horn of Africa. It's 600,000 square kilometers, making it larger than France, Italy, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Oromia is populated by over 40 million people. It's the origin of human race and the Geleto system. Oromia is the birthplace of coffee and home to world-class athletes. Also is a nation with multi-faith society, Christianity, Islam, and Waqf. Oromia is the third largest single nation in Africa and the single largest nation in East Africa. It has been occupied by Ethiopia for over 130 years and is struggling for self-determination. Oromia has an unaccounted number of Oromo refugees living in other countries.
Welcome to Oromia Insight. My name is Aliye Geleto. We have a guest from University of Melbourne. Tsegaye, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ali. Yes, my name is Tsegaye Ararssa. I am a PhD student at the University of Melbourne Law School here in Melbourne. I came from Oromia. Prior to coming here, I was a law teacher at the University of Addis Ababa, and for a brief while I also worked as a governance and human rights team leader and advisor to the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. I'm a lawyer by training. I am a lecturer and an academic by profession. That's what I do, and right now I'm doing my PhD, and I'm in the final year of completion of my thesis on constitutional law and constitutional legal theory at the University of Melbourne Law School.
Recently, there is a lot of things actually happening in diaspora. What is Diaspora Project?
Right. The Ethiopian government has in the Foreign Ministry a Diaspora Engagement Directorate, Diaspora Affairs Directorate. It's kind of a department within the Foreign Ministry, which basically facilitates the engagement of the Ethiopian government with the diaspora communities across the globe so that they can actually connect with the people living abroad. What it does, and it's financed usually, it's financed by the international community, mainly the development aid countries, donors in Ethiopia. And while I was working as the UNDP Governance and Human Rights team leader, I remember that even the UNDP used to support one of the projects that we used to support is the diaspora engagement activity. The reason the government does this is because the international community, particularly the West, and in particular the European Union, was very much interested in border security and immigration reduction. They can do this by basically allocating money which is earmarked as migration for development. One of the things they do is they facilitate the repatriation of the diaspora, the people who lived in the West, back to their home country, facilitate the diaspora community, invest their money back home, facilitate remission of international income to the country. And by doing this, of course, they will enhance the economic growth at home. But at the same time, they will also solve their own problem of multiculturalism, which is boosted by the presence of lots of migrants in the Occident. And for their politics, by investing in the diaspora engagement process for the local politics in Europe and in the Occident, they also enhance or at least make a gesture of supporting this border security program. So by creating growth at home, by returning people from the West back to their country, they basically make it possible for people, A, not to migrate to the Occident, and B, to return from the Occident, and C, to find an excuse for not granting asylum visa for people who seek protection on the ground of persecution. So that is the interest on the part of the donors. On the part of the government, there are 2-3 things. One, it wants to secure international legitimacy, acceptance by the international community. It also is an indirect way of fulfilling its obligation to cooperate with the West on many grounds, on many other issues like fighting terrorism, fighting global poverty, etc., etc. So it seeks a legitimacy from the international community. It poses as a legitimate actor and as a government that engages with its own citizens, even outside of, with its people, even outside of its borders. So they also do it because they want to gain legitimacy from the Ethiopians abroad when they are not doing as much to gain legitimacy from the Ethiopians at home. So they come over, and every year they travel to the West, to the US, to Canada, to Australia. Now it has become almost a yearly process, a yearly routine. They go to Europe, different places in Europe, and the UK included. And one of the things they do, I think they have also started going to the Middle East and Turkey, where there are lots of migrants from Ethiopia, migrants and asylum seekers. So what they do is they go there and present their government activities, and mostly their success stories, because they think the diaspora community is disillusioned not only with their country, but they also think that they don't know much. So they think they can do a charm offensive. They think they can impress the diaspora community to show them that there are lots of things that are improving after they left. So one of the things they do this for is to do propaganda, basically. Tell them success stories, seduce them, so to say, to go back home. And also to find some soft-hearted persons who are, tired of living the hustle of a migrant or a refugee, to go home and probably collaborate with the government. So it's a way of finding raw material for co-optation. And thirdly, particularly for disgruntled communities such as the Oromo, it's a way of saying, look, the country is home to you as well. A lot has improved, and you can come and invest, and so on and so forth. But primarily, they also need their money, which they channel through different institutions, development institutions, self-help organizations, etc., etc. And they want to enhance investment by saying, look, we'll give you this incentive if you are born in Ethiopia, but you have different citizenship, and we give you, housing development program. We have housing.
I'm just curious because these are the people tortured, traumatized, seek asylum, and now they are citizens of Australia, citizens of Canada, citizens of USA. These people are well aware about the government, what they do, what happened to them. Some of them still just remember what happened to them. What they're thinking when they actually come, the same people they actually force to flee the country, and then they want to have a meeting, which actually recently happened in Australia. The government actually sent a letter to Western Oromo community, West Australia Oromo community, to talk about development, International Oromia Diaspora Day.
Yeah.
What is that?
You see, it's true. We know that most of the people who live outside are not living outside by their choice. We know that they are persecuted at different levels. They are survivors of torture, survivors of all sorts of persecution. But that's not what the government story is. That's not what the government believes. Even when Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, all sorts of international organizations report that there is this kind of evil practice in the country, the government says, no, there is no such thing as that. So it's consistent with its policy of respect for human rights, proclaimed respect, declared respect for human rights. And they say everyone who has migrated is only an economic migrant. This is where their policy and the foreign policy of the West coincides and converge, you see. So they basically are saying, we do respect human rights, We are a developmental state. We are a government who cares for its citizens. But there are some who have left, and those who have left are purely economic migrants, meaning they want a better life for themselves. So they don't see it like that, like they have persecuted them.
So what is the role of the Australian government? Because they are the one who actually grant them asylum and to protect them. Now the same government actually came here.
Yeah.
And then
the Australian
what's the role of the government?
The Australian government only protects its citizens, and they know that some of the people, at least most of the people they have granted asylum, I mean, all of the people they have granted asylum to, they are persecuted, and they know that the governments in Africa in general, and this government in particular, is not a government that really respects human rights. But on the other hand, they also want to find a story, because it is not in their interest to receive so many refugees every year. Immigration, as you know, is one of the hot subjects to discuss at every election. So reduction of immigrants is one of the important policy aims of many of the Western governments, including Australia. So when the Ethiopian government says there is no problem, I am here to engage with my own population, and I am here to talk to my citizens here and facilitate their return and investment at home and so on and so forth, the Australian government naturally agrees with that, because if that is happening, then they have an excuse to say, look, this government is not persecuting you. So we know that the Oromo is the most persecuted population in Ethiopia. We know that nowadays the largest number of refugees come from Oromia. And their claim about the torture is horrendous. Now, the Ethiopian government comes here and wants specifically to engage with the Oromos and wants to stage a spectacle in which it celebrates Oromia International Diaspora Day, and it poses as if it is a pro-Oromo government, all right? It's not accidental, by the way. It is sending the vice president of Oromia, right, to Perth, for example.
Is there vice president of Oromia, by the way?
That's what they are claiming, because there is the Oromia regional estate, and the vice president of the Oromia regional estate probably is going to come and to address this gathering. It's a very carefully done political choice there. And the reason they are doing this, the reason they are trying to celebrate Oromia International Diaspora Day is to give the impression to the Australian government that this is not a government that persecutes the Oromo. This is the government that celebrates Oromos and Oromia, and not just at home, but also globally. So that's one of the things that they're trying to do, even in asking now through the ambassador in Canberra to have this engagement meeting with the diaspora Oromo community in Western Australia. In Western Australia,
you just reminded me about I think in 2012 when Prime Minister Mellis passed away. They want to broadcast from Ethiopia television to Federation Square, and then the Oromo community actually sent a letter to Victorian Police, and then that mission has actually been cancelled. And then there are about 500 Mellis supporters actually came to Federation Square. The Australian media was laughing, because if Mellis is your hero, what are you doing here? Because you actually came as a refugee and you have been granted asylum because you have been persecuted by the Mellis regime. What are you doing here? The Oromos actually protesting every meeting, doing this, and the government is also granting them an asylum that they have a problem. And the Australian government actually, when they give a visa, or whether it's a visitor or permanent residence, they actually give people who actually haven't committed any crime. But these people actually kill people on a daylight in Oromia. They kill a lot of students. Is it the standard is different? Why they actually give a visa to criminals? This interview will continue next Monday.